8:51, 9 o'clock on Thursday. I got to get my comments in. We are live. We're broadcasting. I got David on the other end. David's on call. Where you at, Dave?
I'm on call right now. Bain Jones Army Community Hospital.
Okay.
Obviously, things are a little slow right now, and which is a good thing. Knock on wood. Hopefully, it stays like that for the rest of the night.
And if things are slow, that means everybody's healthy. Nobody's breaking legs, no car accidents, and nobody's getting shot. So those are good things. All right. Dave, you see the comment I have in the group chat, right? You know that comes from Malcolm X.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
I'll read it to you.
Read it to me.
Malcolm X said the media is. I just took this and ripped it straight from Google. I ain't gonna lie, but it says Malcolm X said the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. Media has been a tool that has proven to influence minds, ideas, behaviors, and attitudes of the masses. Right? True statement. True statement. Because I wasn't really anticipating the White House visit. I knew it was going to happen. I was supportive of it. But coming home, I listen to a few different stations. Coming home, I always have the XM satellite radio set to NBA basketball first, and then after that, I'll click on Fox for a second, then I'll click on CNN, so I can be fair and balanced. And they were playing snippets of the interview, but I actually see the C-SPAN version, so we can get the truth out of people. So we've watched the C-SPAN version. This is what I got from it. Okay, he talked about love, right? That's straight off top. He didn't talk about it first, but that love was inserted in there in multiple places. Then he talked about what people weren't reporting on. He's talking about freeing Larry Hoover. All right, we got to talk about that. We got to touch on it. He talked about stopping frisk in Chicago because, as we've heard in the week coming, Trump was planning on implementing or pressuring Chicago to implement stop and frisk. I think he talked to the police union or somebody, and that's what they wanted to do, and he was supporting that. He also talked about bringing jobs to the hood, specifically Chicago. Yeah. Right? He spoke about masculinity. He spoke about Larry Hoover's program. He talked about Jim Brown's program. And by the way, did everybody see the smile on Jim Brown's face? Come on, everybody's favorite Cleveland Brown. Okay, Dave, I'm gonna let you talk. So,
I mean, it's a lot to digest in that video. If you want, we could go by point by point.
Okay. He also talked about racism and mental health too, right?
Yeah, he touched on that a little bit. I think he brought up some good points. I just don't know what this meeting will lead to, right? I'm sitting down with Donald Trump for lunch. Is this going to result in any true change? I don't know. Hopefully that happens. But yeah, with Kanye West, sometimes it's just difficult to follow him. And he even mentioned it during the interview. He talked about how when you sit down and have a conversation with him, he's going to bring a multitude of ideas to the table. So at times it's difficult because he jumps from subject to subject without any smooth transitions. But that's fine, though. Like you kind of did, you could just sit down, break it down, and go issue by issue. So now I don't know if Trump went ahead and decided to have this lunchtime with Kanye West and get all the media there, if he did this as a photo op or as like a political ploy, or if he's really going to listen to Kanye West and sit down with congressmen and women and try to come up with some solutions to some of the problems, specifically the problems that exist in Chicago. Another thing is this: if Kanye West really wants some governmental assistance in trying to change Chicago, he should probably speak to the governor and the mayor of Chicago, because I think they have a heavier influence on the policies of Chicago in creating some of the change that he's looking for. So again, that makes me question, what's the purpose for this interview with Donald Trump? Was this for Donald Trump to make him look better, or Is he really trying? Is this, a means to certain ends? I'm not sure.
Okay, I would definitely agree with you that it's always good to talk to the mayor and the governor first. That's a very conservative idea. However, we know that the mayor of Chicago, not only is he falling out of favor with a lot of people on the south side of Chicago, but he's also a lame duck at this point. So it'd be meaningless at this time to talk to the mayor of Chicago. Now, when the new mayor comes in, I would say yes. And there's a wide field of people that are running for that position. So who knows what's going to happen then, right? It could be anybody. But the other thing you want to remember is Trump is a celebrity first. Kanye is a celebrity. All right. So Trump is more apt to sit down with a celebrity and kind of appease them or talk to them straight and flat out like plain people, rather than talking to Congress people who are talking in political terms and really aren't going to get anything done. I think that's the reason that people voted Trump in the first place, was because he's going to cut through all the political mess and get straight to the heart of the issues if you have an idea. So that's the businessman in Trump, and that's the celebrity or showman in Trump is, hey, let's get to solutions. Let's not sit here and debate over left, right, left wing this, right wing that. Trump carries a lot of very liberal ideas. He's open to freeing up weed. He's not anti-gay. There's a lot of things that Trump supports. And then there's other ideas that he's really just kind of staunch on. So I think everybody has something in Donald Trump that they can grab onto and say, yeah, I agree with him on that. And for the things that maybe he's less informed on, that's why Kanye West went there. And I think if Kanye West can bring him and Kaepernick together, I think it'll be a beautiful thing.
But here's one of the issues I see that can happen. So these ideas have to some way translate into policies, right? That can have real effect.
Right.
Trump has not shown mastery of being able to sit down with Congress and come up with sound policy to support certain ideas. Right. And some of the ideas that Kanye West wants for Chicago or for this country in general, like these ideas, again, need to be manifested into policy. And that's going to require input and buy-in by Congress to try and get it done. And I also think that that whole process is more complex and complicated than it seems. So the question is, how do we get from these ideas to actual policies so that we can put these ideas into practical play? And will Donald Trump be successful at doing such a thing?
So what do you think about the idea of him possibly freeing Larry Hoover? Now, that's something Trump can do with the wave of a hand.
That's true. I thought that was an interesting idea. I do think that when Larry Hoover went to jail, that it kind of destabilized the gang situation in Chicago, and it actually had a negative impact. Kanye West also brought up the point that prior to Larry Hoover going to jail, he actually started to do some positive things within the city of Chicago. So now, granted, he does have a crime-ridden history, but it is what it is. And I think that the penalty that was levied towards him, the sentencing was definitely excessive. 6 life sentences. I mean, that's ridiculous, especially for the crime that he was found guilty on, conspiracy. So
yeah, so the whole idea of Larry Hoover being free, that's what they didn't talk about on CNN. They didn't talk about on Fox. That can mean one of two things. Either they're not planning on doing it, meaning that, hey, we'll talk about the stop and frisk because that's something that we're really interested in not happening. Or they're uninformed about who Larry Hoover is. They don't know he's one of the biggest, well, I'll just call him a leader. I'll also say he was a criminal, right? But if it would mean freeing the minds of Black people and freeing Larry Hoover at the age of 68, I think when somebody's 68 years old, they're really no threat to society anymore, unless they really just have a wild hair up their ass. They're going to sit down somewhere and calm down, So I think if that were to pretty much set pay the debt, whatever kind of debt it is that he's lost some cool points in the black community. If that gets him back on Hot 97, if that gets him back in the good graces of the South Side of Chicago, great. Because I don't think that'll hurt us, but I also think it's one of the most self-serving. It's self-serving for Hoover, right? Now, when it comes to the idea of stop and frisk.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Before you go, I want to think about Terry Hoover. If he was free, what would that honestly do for the city of Chicago? He's an old head. These young kids who are kind of reckless in the city of Chicago doing their thing. I'm not quite sure if he would be able to resonate with them and that he would be able to organize the different gangs and try to create peace between the gangs and change their ideology from just trying to get money, trying to survive, to actually better in the community. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I think it would be incredibly difficult for him to be able to reach them. And so, but at the end of the day, the 6 life terms was excessive, and I think that I think that was excessive. So he does have that, but yeah, I just don't know what freeing Larry Hoover would, like, how that would actually result in improving the crime rate in Chicago and the current situation, gang situation.
Oh, it wouldn't, but that's the completely self-serving side of it. But what it would do is, like, not my idea, but my thoughts on Black Republicans is, when you become a Black Republican, you lose a lot of points in the Black community for whatever reason. And we don't have any angst toward the Black community. As a matter of fact, we want to see the Black community prosper. So if that gets the attention of the Black community, the Black community just says, wow, Kanye sat down with Trump, and one result of that was, he got one of the biggest inspirations for a lot of hood Black people out of prison. Then that's going to cause them to either look and see, well, maybe it's not a racist party. Maybe Kanye has not completely lost his way. So I think that was done kind of a way to really get back in the graces of hip hop, get back in the graces of Black America, get back into the graces of the pop culture in Black America. So that's that. I don't think that one is as big as maybe the stop and frisk. And I'll tell you again, like, this is nothing that stop and frisk is not something that stop and frisk is not a conservative idea, because most conservatives think that if you do whatever you have to do to stop crime.
Right.
So Kanye is once again showing that he's not full conservative, he's not full liberal. He's about trying to find the best ideas that he thinks will work. I don't agree with stop and frisk just off the point of stop and frisk, but I can ride with it, because right now we're getting by without stop and frisk. So if it makes some people safer, if it makes some people feel better, if it makes some people happy, let's do that, because it's nothing that we need to press right now. Let's see what other ways we have to stop the crime, So I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah, well, I'm not Larry, like the Black Americans being like all of a sudden becoming more accepting of Donald Trump. I don't think it would have that type of effect, to be completely honest, but I don't know. That's just my opinion on that. And you're saying that you actually agree with stop and frisk, or you don't think that, like, yeah, what's your opinion of stop and frisk?
I don't have an issue with it, but then again, but it's not about me. This is about Kanye in the White House. I don't agree with it, but that's me.
But it, like, when you look at it in New York, the city of New York, it was not shown to reduce robbery, burglary, or any other crime, and it also, Blacks and Hispanics were disproportionately affected by it. So honestly, it rendered itself an ineffective policy. So I mean, in my opinion, it honestly, one can make the assertion that it's downright racist. So in my opinion, I I don't see the purpose of implementing it in other cities or anything of that nature. It's ineffective. So why should we have it? We should do away with it.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree. So you agree with Kanye on that one, and that's good. So that just shows that he's going into the White House. He's getting out good ideas for all people. And at the end of the day, like, all I really want is for Kanye not to be demonized for his ideas. Like, I want to not be demonized for my ideas. Like, you want to be not to be demonized for your ideas. And let's get some real discussions going.
Gotcha.
And the thing is,
go ahead, Gus.
Okay.
What were you saying? I'm sorry.
I was saying, we can agree to disagree on it, because at the end of the day, a good idea is a good idea.
Yeah.
And it's all about just getting good ideas out into the atmosphere. So Kanye West goes in there, and that's his idea. He had that audience with the president, then he can put that idea out there. And I mean, like, that's good for you, because he's supporting an idea that you agree with, and it may have a long-term effect. Like, I can concede a lot, and my conservative thoughts and my conservative ideas. Like, the whole thing is about democracy is nobody's gonna get everything their way. Right. Let's not stifle the system by controlling the media. Let's not stifle the system by taking sound bites and misconstruing what people are saying. Let's not stifle the system by making things up. So this is just, I like that he went in there, and if he can stop and frisk, and that's good for a lot of people. That makes some people feel good. If it can, if you think it'll lower crime, whatever else, let's test it out.
I got to press you a little bit on stop and frisk, because you're making it seem like it's, stopping it would be more of a feel good measure.
Oh no, I'm not.
I know
that's my opinion.
Yeah, I gotta throw some statistics at you, because I know.
Listen, at the end of the day, I'm not getting caught up on stop and frisk. Like, I believe the way I believe on it, but if you believe the way you believe on it, oh shit, I lost him. Okay, my point is, and this is the issue. We don't want to get caught up on one issue, right? Because you may not change people's ideas on one issue. What we want to do is have conversations that we can continually grow. Have conversations where we can continually come up with new ideas. You're not going to become a better anything by talking to yourself, right? So we have to get in the exercise of just having more ideas thrown our way, and having ideas challenged. Now, the only reason I told him, hey, I don't want to talk about stop and frisk right now, is because this video is not about stop and frisk. This video is about Kanye West going into the White House and holding an audience with the president. Hold on one second. You still live? Yep. Come on back in. I'm gonna let him get his point out about stop and frisk. I'm gonna shoot this. It must have been on my end. He thought I kicked him out. I didn't kick him out. But okay, what do you think? I mean, what do you guys think?
Are we?
Oh yeah, live broadcast never stop. Go ahead, Dave. Hit me with the stop and frisk facts, but we got to hit the next point with this Kanye too.
All right, yeah, real quick. I mean, back in 2017, 90%, so a vast majority of the individuals who were stopped and frisked were African Americans and Latinos between the age of 14 and 24. Over 70% of them were actually found to later found to be innocent. So, and that racial disparity still persists, even after like controlling for like precinct variability and race-specific estimates and of actual crime participation. So, I mean, all of this research, which is solid research, pretty much shows that it's a racist policy and it's ineffective also at reducing crime. So,
okay,
the numbers up that.
Kanye West supports your ideas. So,
All right.
then he spoke about masculinity. Well, a lot of people. I hope you caught that on the C-SPAN version because they didn't want to let that one out there. But he mentioned the fact that he came up in a female household, or his father left while he was young, and it was just him and his mom. He said there was a lot of female energy when he was coming up. He said now he's married to a woman who has a lot of female energy in her house, and he said he didn't feel with Hillary's, what did they say, "I'm with her" campaign. He didn't feel like that he could go outside and play catch with his son, and I think that went over a lot of people's heads. Some people may have found it sexist. I don't know. But he said, when I put this hat on, I feel you made this hat. This hat makes me feel like Superman. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be dismissive towards his feelings and the effects that he believes being in a household with a strong woman had on him. But how old is Kanye West now?
41.
41. So is he trying to make the assertion that he's still dealing with the effects of being in a single parent household with just a woman?
No, so this is another like conservative. If you listen to a lot of conservative bloggers, if you listen to a lot of conservative black male, they also happen to be, they're strong proprietors of masculinity, and they talk about masculinity and how, if you are a masculine man, or if you have, if you believe in masculine ethics, masculine whatever, then conservatism is really the only way for you to go, because otherwise we're dismissed. So that's where he was coming from with that. He didn't come right out and say that. Kanye says things the way he says them, but he pretty much said what's on the heart of a lot of conservative males.
So how does that make sense that somehow masculinity is more associated with conservatism as opposed to liberal ideology? I would need an explanation to kind of support that.
Yeah, and we'll have to I'm not prepared to talk about that right now, but we'll have to have, you have my word, we will have a talk on that,
Yeah, because
why that is.
Yeah, personally, I think you can maintain masculinity independent of your political ideology.
Sure, you can.
I don't see why you can't. You can't.
Okay, but at least he brought the idea up. So now the idea is in the atmosphere. Whoever watches the C-SPAN version of the rant or talk or whatever you want to call it, whoever watches that, that idea is at least it's out there for people to talk about or watch a video about or get information on. So next one again, I'm gonna go back. Did you see the smile on Jim Brown's face?
No, I didn't know if there was a smirk in it, or if that was like a genuine smile about everything that Kanye West said. I didn't know how to perceive that.
Okay.
And he was so quiet during the conversation too. He didn't really say much. I mean, the one thing that he pointed out was how Kanye West stated that if our president looks bad, we look bad, and he re-emphasized that and the importance of that. But outside of that, he didn't really say much. So I didn't know how to completely.
Well, he's an old man, Dave. I mean, he's old, and I'm pretty sure, after all the years he had of playing football and everything else, I'm pretty sure he slowed down a little bit, just like Muhammad Ali or somebody like that. But when Trump was first elected, he wasn't shy in coming out and saying the way he felt about. Okay, good. So he's watching it now. Frank just hit me up on a message. He said he's watching it on YouTube right now, so maybe he'll join us in here in a minute. But when he came out, he supported Trump immediately. Him and there was one other famous old sports person. Also, Bob Johnson, one of the few black billionaires in the world. He came out. He showed his support. Steve Harvey showed his support. Who else? And all of them pretty much got burnt to the stake for doing so.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is because he didn't say much, I don't know how to interpret that smile. He could have been completely perplexed by everything that Kanye West said because he was jumping from subject to subject, very tangential. And like you said, given his age, it could have been difficult for him to follow it. So that smile could have represented a smirk of, I don't know what just happened, but here's something solid that he said. I know I'm reaching, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is I don't know what to make of that smile. What did you think about the smile?
It looked like he was pleased, man. And, I looked at it almost as when I see the elders making smiles like that or looks like that, they're saying, pretty much, yo, I can leave this place and know that my people are being free, knowing that my people they're free in their minds and they're breaking the chains. Because he gave that smile, especially when Kanye shut that reporter down. When he shut the reporter down and told him, you think you talking about racism is going to trap me, to that effect. He said, do you think you talking about racism is going to trap me into some type of specific answer or emotion? Like, you had one question, I'm going on to the next question. I'm not going to give you a straightforward, simple answer you can take a sound bite. And when you saw James Brown's face, that looked like a genuine smile to me. Yeah. And I also look at that when so the other comment I make on that is just that when you're dealing with Black people and their thoughts about what the ancestors thought about or thinking about us today. If I was a slave and I came into the year 2018 and I saw my people killing each other, I saw my people, on television shaking their ass and doing everything that was wrong, and knowing that that's not going to take us any further, I would be more upset. That would have me rolling over in my grave. But if I heard one of my descendants say something to the effect of, slaves could have gotten free, or 400 years is too long to be enslaved, I would smile, because that's true progress. And only somebody who suffered under the yoke is going to understand true progress. So I think Jim Brown's smile is a good message to the smile that you would get from a lot of the ancestors when they saw Kanye in the White House being as free as any Black man can be.
Mm-hmm. And in that comment, you kind of insinuated that things aren't as well off as we may think. When you stated that, hey, if one of the ancestors came back, they would see that we're killing one another, that we're, throwing our bodies out there in the media, and we're doing this, that, and the third. Are you insinuating that things aren't like, what are you insinuating there? I don't want to.
I'm insinuating that our ancestors would hate to see us mentally enslaved. And so the murder is only a symptom of the actual disease. The disease is mental enslavement, right? The disease is people can't think for themselves. The disease is people are scared to try anything new. And then the symptom is, poverty. The symptom is, just failing in life. So I don't think we need to be afraid of offending the ancestors in that way. They've been offended way worse than that. They went through slavery.
Yeah.
You're not going to offend a slave by calling him a bad name. He's been whipped. He's had to pick cotton. He's had to, chop sugarcane, whatever else, or dig in a mine. He's been through hell and back, he or she. So us saying, okay, 400 years of slavery was this or that is not going to offend that slave.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think you're kind of overplaying or overemphasizing this idea of us Black Americans being excessively emotional and always responding emotionally to things, that we're all kind of sinking into that victimhood type mentality and falling in alignment with the whole identity politics that's out there. Because I don't think that's necessarily the case. Now, are there a certain percentage of Black individuals that may fall into that category? Absolutely. But I think that there are some real problems that exist within our society that's affecting us, and that's intertwined or built into the systems of this country. Mm. But, obviously, I do think that new ideas, new ways of bettering ourselves, that's all important. And I'm glad Kanye West is getting his ideas and his thoughts out whether I agree with him or not, like you said, is good because it sparks conversation. Do I think what he did in having this conversation with Donald Trump will actually result in in actual effect? I'm not 100% sure. I would, hope it will, but I don't know. I don't think that's the best strategy to try and get some of the changes that we want to see in the city of Chicago. But yeah, I don't know. Were you kind of hinting towards that like the Black community is overly emotional and responsive to certain things, and we.
Oh, I've been saying that for a long time, and he mentioned it. He mentioned it direct when the guy. Did you watch the part where the guy asked him the question about you said that George Bush. You said that George Bush didn't care about Black people. Some people would say that Trump doesn't care about Black people. What do you think about that? It was a CNN reporter. He was pretty much trying to. So he asked that question, and Kanye said, "Did you watch it?"
Yeah, I saw that part.
Yeah, so Kanye told him straight up, like, I was overly emotional at that point. He said a lot of us get overly emotional. And I say the same thing, Dave, because there's been plenty of times I've been very emotional about. I used to get really emotional. I had one embarrassing moment, man. I was listening to talk radio and somebody was talking. I was into a conservative talk radio show. I was out. It wasn't really a popular one. It wasn't like Rush or anybody like that. But he said something that offended me, and I had to call in. And when I called in, it wasn't that I was nervous to be on the air. It was that I had so much to say, and my thoughts weren't connected, and it was all emotion. And I was stuttering, and I really didn't get my point. I didn't convey my point clearly because I was emotional. So I'm not saying all Black people are like that. I'm just talking about myself. I can only talk about my own experience. The way Kanye talked about his experience and why he said what he said on national TV when he was talking about Bush. And he was also very emotional at that time.
But he was trying to make a point with that statement and what he was saying, like in the context of the conversation at that point. I think he was trying to make a point that sometimes us as Black folks, we get caught up in our feelings. And that's fair. That's fair. He can make that point if he wants. But like, for example, he talked about his response to the lack of expediency when it came to relief for Hurricane Katrina. And, that's why he made that statement that Bush doesn't like Black people. That's where that stemmed from.
I just told you, Kanye came straight from the horse's mouth. He told you why he made that statement.
Yeah,
he said I was overly emotional and trained to think this way.
Well, I think some people were somewhat okay with that statement because there was a lack of urgency when it came to relief, specifically for African Americans. During the Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, pause. You moved from the Gold Coast. Gold Coast is not about Hurricane Katrina. We were talking about him being emotional. So he said the reason I made that statement was because I was emotional.
Okay. Well, if that's the reason why he made the statement, it was out of pure emotion, then yeah, that was a misguided statement. But if he actually was making this statement because of what I just stated, then that makes a little more sense. Why was there a lack of urgency? Why were people going through the despair that they were going through for such a long period of time when we live in the most powerful, when we are essentially the most powerful country in the world? Most Americans would make that assertion. Like, wow. So I don't know, but if you're saying it was purely based off emotions, then I agree with you.
I didn't say that. That's what he said. Kanye West in the interview he just gave with Trump, and I'm saying I can relate with that. I don't want to project that on all African Americans and say this is what all African Americans do. Okay, from my observation, yes, African Americans are emotional when it comes to slavery. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's what seems to be. And from my personal experience, from my anecdotal experience, what I can sample with my own mind, that's the way I was. And now I'm hearing from him, he's saying that's what caused him to speak out like that during Hurricane Katrina.
Gotcha.
That's the way I was.
I guess my question is this then. what is your point in making, like, what is Kanye's West's point in making that statement, and like what's your point in kind of revealing that to us, that you were emotional and that most African Americans are like that, emotional when it comes to slavery? What's the point of, like, why are you bringing that up?
There's two things. One, he didn't make a statement, he was asked a question.
So, yeah, but he followed it up with the answer or a statement.
Right. He followed it up with an answer. So he's just being honest. So the first thing you have to do, or I have to do, or anybody has to do, is one, be honest about their own feelings and what they're feeling in any emotional time. So he said he was being honest. And I don't think he spoke on why he said what he said too often, but he's also said in other interviews that he goes from the heart. You know, he speaks from the heart. He doesn't always have all the facts. He said, if you want to get the facts about something, you know, talk to my friend GLC, or talk to this person, talk to Candace Owens. He's like, that's not me. He said, I read or I listen, I have conversations, and I go with my heart. You know, and I think that's part of the growth, is we grow almost just naturally through life. Like, you're going to start off thinking one thing, and then after sampling it time and time again, you might think something else. But through it all, you know, you're kind of following your heart, right? So that's black. That's a lot of people do that, not just black people, but black people specifically. And I think a lot of times a white person or anybody can use racism to press the button in a black person to make a black person pretty much react the way they want them to react.
So are you making that, because I want to make sure I'm getting you correctly, understanding you correctly. Are you saying because blacks are emotionally invested in the whole idea of slavery and what we went through, that then because of that, white people can easily roust them by playing the racism game? Or
not white people, black people. I mean, who doesn't do it? Al Sharpton does it. You know, white liberals can do it.
So are you saying a lot of times when we bring up the idea that something that's happening is due to racism, that majority of the time that's not the case, and it's just people using that in order to engage and rouse black folks and get them to react? Is that that's what you think?
Yeah, that's my observation.
Interesting. Okay. I respect your perspective.
Thank you.
I think there may be a little bit of that, but I mean, you know my perspective.
I look at it like this, and I think we all need to be cognizant of race, but we shouldn't be too controlled by it. And I think part of that is just getting a full sample of all suffering in the world. And even what's not considered suffering, if we can just be able to put ourselves, you know, we have this sense of presentism, meaning that today, you know, I'm working 7 to 8 hour days. I mean, your days may be longer. You're a doctor, right? Or it may not be any longer because actually you're a military doctor. So I know those teams control. But you know, we work 7 to 8 hours a day. We get our, you know, high five or our 6-figure salary. You know, we get a couple of weeks of vacation a year. You know, we live in our suburban neighborhoods, nice and comfy, or maybe we just live in the city, but we're still nice and comfy. We got TVs on the wall, microwaves in the homes, right? Soft beds to sleep in, and you know, temperature controlled homes. And we think that that's the way things have always been, but we also have to remember that people living without lights, people were sleeping on the floor, people were, you know, subject to all types of weather any times of day, and people had to work long and strenuous hours, 16-hour days. Kids were working 16 hours a day. You know, you take yourself back 100 or 150 years, it was a different way of life for everybody.
Right.
And we had wars going on, and when these wars were happening, people were dying in gruesome ways. You know, and slavery was horrible. I got it. The physical portion, though, you think about this, the physical portion is not really what was fucking people up, because no matter who you were at that time, you were busting your ass and working pretty hard. Most people were, right? I'm sure somebody was in the big house sipping sweet tea. But the part of slavery that was so gruesome was not the physical part. It was the mental part. It was the mental enslavement, knowing that you couldn't go anywhere, knowing that you couldn't read a book.
I don't know, cuz I think both of them were equally
right.
Severe. Like the physical portion was pretty bad too. You had people being
I just said that, but all I said was compared to other people's physical punishment at the time. Also, realize, man, if you were working on a farm back then, period, and you're a white man in the North, you were still busting your ass, right? There were plenty of white people in the North and in the South that didn't have any slaves, and they were busting their ass.
The only thing is,
but hold on, the slave right next to you also busting his ass. So everybody's busting their ass, right? However, the part that was hurting the slave was the mental enslavement. And I'm not saying that that was self-imposed. I'm saying it was imposed by a system.
Right. I can't let you get away with that though. Like I totally agree with the fact that the mental enslavement, that aspect was severe and it was purposeful by the oppressor and it was extremely bad. I totally agree with that. But I don't think you could compare the physical toll that slavery took on slaves compared to lower class working white folks at that time. I mean, blacks were being murdered, hung, being raped. They didn't have access to good health care.
That's murder, though. So what I'm saying is,
and even the amount of physical work, I'm pretty sure that slaves were doing much more work than the lower class or poor white folks at that time. They just were. And they had no choice in the matter, obviously. So I think both were very bad. But to your point, I get the point you're making. You're saying that the mental enslavement was extremely bad. It was severe, and we have to take notice to that because we don't want to continue to be enslaved by our oppressor. Is that the point you were making?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that was the point you were making, and I can see that. I think it's important that we're free-spirited, free-minded, that we don't allow for the past to continue to deeply haunt us and hold us down. I mean, I know we're still facing a lot of systemic racism and oppression and in a different form in this time and day, but we got to continue to fight against that, but at the same time rise as a people and be stronger than our oppression and not allow for it to mentally captivate us to the point in which it's preventing us from prospering and from growing as a people. Like, I definitely agree with that perspective, but
not exactly the point I was making, all right? Because I'm not trying to get into a arm wrestling match about which was worse, right? But let's go to the North, all right? You wouldn't want to be a slave in the South for sure, okay? So let's bury that. You also would not want to be a farmer in the North, okay? You wouldn't want to trade your life right now with going and working a farm in Illinois in 1842.
Okay.
All right, nobody would. It would suck. And I think once you realize that the work, and I'm not talking about the beating and the whooping because that's all part of mental enslavement, or the murder, that's part of the mental enslavement. I'm just saying in general, we have to have a sense of what was going on at that time in the world, period. And realize that the bad parts of slavery was not the work. Work is work. And as a matter of fact, work is good. Because if those ancestors, white, black, Hispanic, if they didn't work, they wouldn't have lived.
Okay, the question is this: what's your point of making that statement? What are you getting at?
What do you think the point was?
I'm asking you because I don't want to misconstrue your thoughts.
I said it straight. If you were in Mexico, in Africa, in Europe, in Russia in 1840, you were busting your ass.
No, I mean as far as it being more of a mental, like the mental enslavement is very severe and significant. The point you're highlighting. So I'm asking, what's the purpose of you making that point in this particular time context?
Is it such a stretch for Kanye's 400 years of slavery is a choice at this point is it such a stretch now for somebody to understand that if they can remove the physical portion or the physical aspect of it, don't think about the physical part, and realize that we are still mentally enslaved in a lot of ways, that we haven't broken the mental chains of slavery. Now it makes it a lot easier for people to understand that. Saying, okay, look, I know we're afraid to talk about slavery. We're afraid, most people are afraid to talk about this because for a lot of people, not for all people, but for a lot of people, it's a very emotional subject. They have a hard time talking about this. And all I'm saying is, if I want to learn about slavery, you can get part of it by reading somebody's memoir. You can read 12 Years a Slave, and it's going to tug at your heartstrings, as it should. It's a very moving story. That's one way to read about it. But then it stops us from being able to take an atlas or take an almanac and just get the facts.
I don't think that's true. I think people have no problem doing that. But here's my question. You brought up the fact that we're still mentally enslaved or enchained. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Like, how are we still mentally enslaved?
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. I mean, that's a whole nother.
We got to do a podcast on that, because I hear a lot of people make that statement, but they don't really elaborate or explain what they mean by that.
What I'm saying is being able to, if you're too emotional, it makes being able to examine facts, or you have anecdotal evidence and then you have empirical evidence. You know that, you're a doctor. And a lot of times, people aren't able to look at the empirical evidence because there's too much bandwidth being taken up by, their feelings. And sometimes you just have to look at empirical evidence. And the thing is, sometimes you don't have to look at empirical evidence. Sometimes you have to go with your heart, because sometimes feelings matter.
So you're saying because we're still mentally enslaved, that mental enslavement results in us being extremely emotional and not being able to decipher facts from emotions. Is that the
the mental enslavement causes that's one of the things that mental enslavement causes, but mental enslavement causes a lot of other things also, right? And we're not the only ones that are mentally enslaved. I mean, a lot of people are mentally enslaved, but
I personally, if you don't mind me interjecting, I personally do not believe that Black people, as a like the majority of Black people, because of being in an unstable emotional state of mind, in certain situations, that we completely avoid the facts of the situation. I don't see that. As I go through, I haven't been exposed to that, as far as with the Black people who are around me, and that just hasn't been my experience with other Black people. I do think that we have emotions. Everybody has emotions. It doesn't matter what the race is, and emotions do play a role in our overall thought process. But I think that we do have the ability to be able to perceive what facts are, and also identify our emotions and appreciate them at the same time. So that's just my own personal opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what's up. I'm glad you put that out in the atmosphere,
You said that.
If a person is overly emotional, I'm not saying like there's a balance, right? So you need emotion. Sometimes you should go off your emotions. It's almost like a shortcut to get to an idea quicker. We can't always analyze every fact, but when you have the time, if you have additional time, you should be able to approach a subject and be completely objective, be completely emotionless. It's almost like if you're working, when we look for somebody for the Supreme Court, what are we asking them to do? Are we asking them to be emotional?
Now we're asking them to be able to interpret the Constitution in respects to the case they're confronted with.
That's it. So it's like, I think that's the way we may have to get after a lot of issues that we have. Like, for instance, if we have information from good sources that say that, hey, stop and frisk doesn't work, that there's no benefit from it, then stop it. But I think with the, I'll just bring this up because you spoke about it earlier. If in stop and frisk, is 70% of the time people are being stopped unjustly. That's one way to measure it. The other way to measure it is, did crime decrease by 1%? Did it increase by 1%? Did it decrease by 5%? Did it increase by 5%? Because then you have to break down and say, okay, well, what is 5%? Is 5% 50 lives? You know, and say, well, is 50 lives worth offending 1,000 people? And then you have to do the math and say, okay, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to make sure we're not offending these 1,000 people? Or do we want to save these 50 people from death? You know, so it's one of those things like, if we're going to really dig into that subject, we would have to dig into it. But
yeah, and I wish I had it right in front of me. I know it did not result in a decrease in crime. I know for a fact that it didn't result in the decrease of crime. And my philosophy is always trying to do the greater good for the greatest number of people. So and I just take on that utilitarianistic type mindset. Some people may disagree, have a different philosophy they go by, but based off that, my philosophy, stop and frisk it's not doing the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. It's doing more harm than good. So
all right, so let me ask you this: if it did save one life and offended 1,000 people, would you say that one life is not worth saving, or would you say that 1,000 people are not worth offending?
but here's the issue: sometimes the stop and frisk results in death as well, and we would have to get the numbers on that too. You have Black people who are inappropriately stopped and frisked, and we know that situations like that historically have escalated to the point of someone being killed. Majority of the time, it being the black quote unquote offended. So I would also have to look at the numbers of how many people who were stopped and frisked, specifically of the Black and brown persuasion, ended up being physically harmed or murdered, to better answer that question.
Got it. Let me ask you this: if you could have a perfectly peaceful world with no war and no violence, and everybody was wealthy and had everything they needed to be happy, but the trade-off was there was one little girl or boy, whatever you want to do, in somebody's basement that was being brutally tortured every moment of their life. Would you make the trade-off? But nobody knew about this except for just a few people. Could you make the trade-off?
That's a difficult philosophical question to answer. So you're saying that everyone else is in good health, there's no crime, there's no murder. Man, I almost feel like, man, that's tough. I don't even want to say it on air because I know people will have their opinions. But if I'll just say this, knowing my philosophical ideology as far as, you know, ascribing to utilitarianism, you could pretty much come up with the answer, what my answer to that question might be.
Yeah, and that's just odd because I would opt for the imperfect world. Because
more people, with that happening to more people, like more than just that one girl being.
I wouldn't want to be responsible for that one person.
But would we be responsible for that?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So it's you and just a few other people that know about this. It's almost like a trade-off you're making with the universe, with God, or whatever else, or whatever being. You're just saying, hey, we'll have this many people living perfectly, and we'll sacrifice this many people. Almost like if you go back to the ancient Mayans, or I'm pretty sure they've done it.
All right, we could go more recent than that. Look at Jesus. That's pretty much what his life and story is about, right? The ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
Utilitarianistic type ideology of him sacrificing his life so all of us can be granted eternal life.
He did that.
So if you ascribe to that, you probably would agree with the idea that, hey, maybe that one sacrifice for the betterment of all is worth it.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of Christian conservatives out there who definitely believe in Jesus and believe that his one sacrifice was worth it. They probably
on a mission, and Jesus did that somewhat willingly, right? He did it. That's what Jesus.
I don't think it was willingly.
You're talking about a child, though. I think that's the difference. You're talking about a child who doesn't want this.
But what was that? I don't know if that was willingly done by Jesus. He even prior to being crucified stated like, God, if you could take this cup away from me, please take it away. It sounded to me like God really wanted him to do it, and he wanted to fulfill the purpose of his Father. So I wouldn't say that it was willingly. And I think Jesus's life is just as precious as that little child, right? Or do you think there's a difference?
No, I mean, Jesus' life, a lot might argue that Jesus is more of a staple or whatever else, but that's a religious question, and that's something that. But we do know Jesus did that, right, for us. The child is not doing this for us. The child is doing this for us because we are allowing the child to be punished, but the child's not asking for this.
But I got a question for you.
It's more akin to a sacrifice on a Mayan temple. It's more akin to a sacrifice in some type of tribe somewhere in the world where they're going to sacrifice this kid so it'll rain outside.
I don't know. Do you think that people focus on the idea that Jesus did this willfully? Yeah, I guess there are some people who do willfully for us, even though I don't think that's the case. Or do you think they focus more on the idea of the sacrifice and the end result of it?
I don't know. I don't know about Jesus, man, but I'm talking about like a kid. Damn, man. I'm not talking about Jesus, man. Jesus was 30-some-odd years old. Jesus was nailed to the stake. He was innocent. You got plenty of innocent people. I'm talking about a kid.
A kid is innocent too. And the point that you were making is that somehow because Jesus is in his 30s and you state that he made the decision to do it, that makes him innocent than the child who has no decision in the matter. I guess my counter argument is stating that Jesus, I'm not sure that he wanted to do this. He willfully did it, and what would have been the consequence if he decided not? He would have to deal with God.
All right, I'm gonna bring it back around to Kanye West, man, because you're obfuscating the issue right there. You're not really being. See, what I'm talking about is basically, are you willing? It's all about trade-offs. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer to any of this.
Right.
And I would try to get to the point that this is a difference probably in our philosophy or in our political stance.
Gotcha.
Because when it comes to, you would think with Republicans being such a disconnected and racist and self whatever party, that they wouldn't be the party that is talking about people having less abortions. They wouldn't be the party that's about stopping crime at all costs, right? Basically just trying to stop people from dying so people at least have the ultimate opportunity, which is life. Like, we talk about, equal results versus equal opportunity. Well, the best equal opportunity, period, is just having the opportunity to live. Not saying, okay, well, in order to make my life better, this person has to die, or so I'm not inconvenienced, by being stopped and frisked. This person may end up getting shot. And I understand what you're saying when you're saying, well, it doesn't necessarily stop and frisk. Actually the crime got worse, whatever else. Okay, if that's it, and that's what I would get from the data, if I can look at the data and say, wow, they had this stop and frisk and crime got worse. So I guess you're right. But if I look at that and I say, okay, stop and frisk, actually, if it saved 10 lives and it inconvenienced 1,000 people, do we have an argument to make to say, well, I inconvenienced 1,000 people, but I saved 10 lives?
Yeah, like you said, I think it just comes down to our ideology. I feel like you're more of a consequentialist, like that every act you have to consider what is right and what is wrong. So it's all about whatever the moral or the right act that you commit producing good outcome or good consequence. And it doesn't matter about how, how many people are affected by that right act. It's like if it's right, it's right. So based off your, at least what I'm getting from you, based off your philosophy, I understand your perspective and why you're thinking along the lines that you're thinking.
Yeah, and it's all about an idea, and like I said, it's about people expressing their ideas, having the opportunity to just get out and put their ideas out into the atmosphere without it being shut down automatically or not being given an opportunity to explain why they feel the way that they feel. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
yeah, man, just big ups to Kanye, man, because he brought in so many different points to the atmosphere. If people get into the interview or into the talk on C-SPAN and they're not getting it through, you know, a sound bite or a 1 or 2 minute a clip of the highlights of what he said, because they didn't even highlight the most important parts that he said, right? But if somebody gets the raw footage and they're able to digest that and understand even 20% of it, they're going to get more from that than they're going to get from listening to 2 minutes off of Fox or CNN.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. And I'm glad that Kanye got his ideas out. But for me, it's all about having an effect, like the end goal or the end effect. And that's what I'll be waiting to see if this conversation that he has, because there's been, as you stated earlier, there's been a lot of conversations that prominent, quote unquote, prominent Black figures have had with Trump, and some of those conversations, I don't know the details of them, but I'm not seeing a significant amount of change within the Black community, specifically when it comes to you know, the current incarceration rates and our issues with the judicial system, and also the amount of wealth that we own or that we have in this country. So I guess I could then say that I'm not sure if those prior conversations have resulted in any good. And um, based off that, history, I'm pressed to say that I'm not one. I would be more pressed to say that this conversation will not really result in any change, any real change. But if it does, I will happily admit that I was wrong, and I will be extremely excited and exuberant about the impact that Kanye West will have if there is some true change. And I think that would be a great thing. And I'm hopeful and auspicious that it will result in something, but I'm hopeful for that. But my rational mind says that it's just another photo op.
Nah, my rational mind says something's going to happen, and it'll probably happen fast. And if it's going to happen before the midterm election, before the elections or whatever, I don't know. But normally with Trump, it's a pretty quick flash to bang with your ideas. When you bring your ideas to him, or when he has an opportunity to basically do something that's going to make it look like he's winning, it happens quick, right? Korea happened pretty quick. I mean, he jammed Kavanaugh in there pretty quick. When it comes to getting results, especially for Black America, I mean, the first thing you have to say is
really quick. What do you mean specifically? Because there's no true denuclearization program that's currently in place, and we have satellite footage and intel that tells us that he's not denuclearizing.
right. It takes a long time to nuclearize, but I'm talking about meeting up happened quick, and us talking to Kim Jong Un happened really quick. That talk went well, so we'll see how long it takes. But
I'm sorry, I gotta say this because I think that presidents in the past have been unwilling to speak with Kim Jong Un or with North Korea because they did not want to legitimize them, right? Because of their policy and because of the relationship between the two countries. Yes, the conversation between Trump and Kim Jong Un did happen fast, but again, I want to see end results. What comes of it comes of that conversation, because until I see end results, to me, it's all for the cameras.
yeah, so like I said, it happens quick, And then you also have to look at black employment's up, black crime in Chicago is down. All right. And that started pretty much when Trump entered office, as far as the crime going down.
Kanye said every year, I think he said, was it black crime or crime in Chicago has decreased? Did he give the span of years, like from what year to what year? Because he said he spoke with
year over year, but he may have misspoke also. If you look at the crime, I think it was either last year or the year before last. It was like one of the worst years. It was 2016. It was actually one of the worst years. It's been month over month is the actual term. But you know, Kanye, when he talks quick, and sometimes he talks incorrect. But yeah, it's month over month. I'm positive about that. I read the article and also saw some stats.
And do you think it's because of President Trump, or you think it's deeper than that? It's multifactorial.
It's not. It's going up because of President Trump. So I think if you're the president at that time, you need to get that credit, right? So anything that happens under your watch, he's going to get blamed for. If it's bad, if it's good, then he accepts the credit for it, right? So
true statement.
Yeah. So whenever he runs down the list of his accomplishments in the black world or in America in general, those are results. So he gets results. I don't think that's going to be an issue. So I don't think you're going to be disappointed if you're looking for any action on stop and frisk, or possibly even freeing Larry Hoover. It may actually happen.
I hope you're right, but you know, I'll believe it when I see it. I hope you're right, though. Don't get me wrong. I'll believe it when I see it, though.
Yeah, all right, man. So those are my initial ideas. You know, man, I want to thank you for coming on, man, and just splitting a couple brain cells with me, man, going back and forth.
Yes, yeah.
You know, challenging some common held ideas or whatever else, and you know, we're just. It's all about one. This is for the Facebook, for the YouTube, for everybody out there in my audience, right? What you just witnessed was two people who love each other, because that's the other thing that Kanye talked about. He talked about love.
Yes.
Two people who love each other, brotherly love, right? But disagree with each other, but are making each other sharper, right? Just by conversation.
Absolutely.
And so this is what comes from good conversation. We're not shutting each other down. You know, we may depart from this video and think about something that the other one said, and we may agree with it, or we can totally disagree with it. But this is the value of having good conversation. This is how you grow, oration, through you know, your ideas, politically, spiritually, whatever else. So just remember that the next time, you know, you want to shut down somebody, or you're cheering when somebody is getting shut down, right? Because you're only probably going to end up getting half the story from this media, one way or the other. That's all I had to say.
Those real words right there, boy.
Yeah, buddy. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stop the broadcast and hold the line.